A very good evening to you. With us here is Comrade Imanyara. Comrade Imanyara, welcome to our interview.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Comrade Imanyara has been very vital in ensuring that this event takes place, rekindling the Pan-African spirit in Kenya. And actually, it's Comrade Imanyara who came up with this theme. Yeah, and we just want to thank you so much, Comrade Imanyara, for being a true comrade and for ensuring that going forward, the Pan-African spirit in Kenya is active and very vibrant.
Thank you very much. Let me first say that when you and Simba approached me and the others to chair this organization, I hesitated because I've not been very active politically since I left politics, but the idea of pan-Africanism to me has always been very close to my heart, and particularly because when I served as a parliamentarian in Kenya, I also served for five years as the head of the Kenya delegation to the Pan-African Parliament, which sits about 3-4 times a year in Midrand in South Africa. And during that time, I realized that contrary to the ideals of our founding fathers, we have lost the spirit of Pan-Africanism, African unity, the very concept of what is Africa, what we stand for. And when the opportunity to chair the Kenyan chapter of Pan-African Congress came, I jumped to accept, because I've done quite a bit of, not only am I a student of Pan-Africanism, I am a Pan-Africanist, and looking back to the history of the Pan-African Congress, right from the very first Congress that was held in London, and the most famous and the most important one, which was in Manchester City in the UK in 1945, at which the founding fathers of the modern Pan-Africanism, as it were, met. That is Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, Marcus Garvey, and others who met and began the idea of Pan-Africanism as a vision to unite the African continent. And you recall that Kwame Nkrumah was very passionate about this. Unfortunately, after he died, and after many African countries became independent, we kind of lost the script, as it were. So and being a founding member in the person of Jomo Kenyatta, Kenya particularly is lagging behind. And so when the idea of the Kenyan chapter came, I thought, yes, we should go back to what is Pan-Africanism and what is the spirit of Pan-Africanism that we led as a country during the times of Jomo Kenyatta, but that seems to have lost meaning and interest, because we are not speaking about it. We do not have any events around it. We don't have any day that we celebrate Pan-Africanism, such as you find in other countries, such as South Africa. And in fact, even the AU Day in Kenya is not celebrated. We don't issue statements. The head of the AU mission in Nairobi is hardly heard of. So it is my hope that we can begin a new conversation around the original ideal and vision of Pan-Africanism and see where we went wrong and how we can revive its spirit. And therefore, this meeting that we have on the 24th of February is extremely important because it marks our first step towards rekindling the ideal of Pan-Africanism. And I'm glad that Speaker of the National Assembly has accepted to be the guest of honor, because as you know, the Pan-African Parliament is an organ of the African Union, and the Pan-African members of Parliament are members of Parliament in their respective countries, and therefore the head of that group is the Speaker of the Speakers of the Parliament, in this case the Speaker of the National Assembly, who is Honorable J.B. Muturi. And so we look forward to hosting him and hearing from him on why we have not implemented the statute of the Pan-African Parliament whose goal was to establish a Pan-African Parliament that is truly representative, at which membership is by direct elections. That was the spirit and that was the principle behind the setting up of Pan-African Parliament, but now it's more than 20 years behind schedule. So I'm hoping that Kenyan chapter can play its rightful role in marshalling the activities of the Pan-African movement throughout the African continent, so that we can rekindle the ideals that Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, Marcus Garvey and others had when they met in Manchester in 1945. Yeah.
Thank you so much, comrade. One of the few things that we have to rekindle is the social, cultural, political, and even the economical bit of the Pan-Africanism. What is your take on the culture bit of it? Do you think we have a culture capital in Africa?
Sadly, we don't. Or if we had, we seem to have lost it because we become slaves of Western culture. So that we are at best speaking the foreign languages rather than Kiswahili or our own local languages. We read and we speak in our national assemblies in languages of former colonial masters. We don't encourage African languages. For example, Kiswahili is spoken in most African countries, and yet it isn't until recently that the African Union made it an official language, and not just in the language, the culture envisages African. What is African? What is genuine Africanness? It could be not only the way we dress, but the education system that we have adopted in the African continent, how we bring up our children, cultural activities. If you go to South Africa, for example, you see because of apartheid era, they were able to inculcate a sense of African cultural values, so that they enjoy their dances, they enjoy speaking their language, and when they talk about Africa, they speak with great passion, because that's what Mandela stood for. And therefore, that is some of the things that we hope that we can interest the Kenyan youth particularly, because they, through no fault of their own, they have not been opened up to Pan-Africanism. And I look forward to the Kenyan chapter of Pan-African Congress, playing a role in getting our youth, and particularly schools within our country, setting up clubs that practice and teach what is African, and setting up a day, for example, when all activities within schools culminating at the national level, when we celebrate Africanness, our cultural values, our beliefs, and having conversation on how we can celebrate what is African.
Thank you so much for talking about this, the cultural bit of it. And now I think we should move to the economic bit of it. We have the AU Vision 2063, the blueprint, which I'm very sure you are very much aware of. And what is your take? What is your take on the future of the economic phase of Pan-Africanism?
Sadly, that is one of our biggest weaknesses, and it isn't until recently that through the efforts of President Kagame that we've set up a Pan-African trade, or rather we've signed a treaty that seeks to establish a free trade within the African continent, because the inter-African trade and economic liaison or cooperation is almost non-existent. We trade more with our former foreign colonial masters and America rather than within the African continent, partly because of communication obstacles. Traveling within Africa is very, very difficult, and that is one area in which we need to set up a lot more in terms of investment within our own African countries to open up borders so that people-to-people travel is cheaper and possible. Right now, it's only air travel that would never want to visit African countries. Kenya Airways, Ethiopian Airlines, and to some extent the South African Airways. But they themselves are going through very hard times right now. So the idea, for example, of setting up a joint Kenya-South African airline, I think it's a movement towards the right direction in terms of enhancing our economic trade within Africa and among African nations.
Yeah. Thank you so much, comrade, for your time, and we hope that the event is going to be successful on the 24th. Thank you so much for taking your time to chair this organization and the event, and to ensure everything runs smoothly. We get the right people for the event and the right venue and the right everything. Thank you so much. What are your parting shots?
We certainly look forward to a very successful afternoon and evening with the activities that are scheduled to be held, and the attendance of many pan-Africanists, particularly from the universities, so that we can begin a fresh conversation about our continent. So I really look forward, and I congratulate you people for thinking and bringing to fruition the spirit of Pan-Africanism through the setting up of the Kenyan chapter of Pan-African Congress. And we look forward very much to the 24th of February, and I personally look forward to being there and inviting our guests of honor together with others who will be attending.
Asante sana, shukran.
Asante.